Hey guys, welcome to our webinar on developing iOS application with Swift. Myself Vipul. Before starting with the webinar, I would just like to know from all of you, are you all able to see my screen as well as my voice is audible to all of you? Okay, so thanks Junaid and Gopal for answering. How about others? Guys, can you please quickly confirm me over the chat window? Is my voice is audible to all of you as well as all of you can see my screen? So we can quickly start with today's webinar. Okay, great. And Ashu, in case if you are not able to see the screen, I request you to just rejoin the webinar and also check the internet connection at your end, since all others attendees can see the screen. Okay, so that would help. And also, guys, just wanted to let you know this webinar is getting recorded. So in case if you plan to see the webinar in more details, or if you want to share it with your friends, you can always refer them. So we would be uploading the copy of this particular webinar to the portal, so you can also have a look thereafter in case if you are facing any technical difficulties while viewing the webinar. Okay, so before starting with the webinar, I would really like to thank you all for taking out some time and just joining this particular webinar. So I hope you would be gathering as much as info as possible for developing the iOS applications with Swift. So this webinar would not be much technical because the aim of this particular webinar is to give you idea on what are the things that you will be learning if you join the Edureka's iOS development with Swift course. So we have a course which is starting from this coming Saturday, and also there is one more batch which is starting from coming 12th. So I think this webinar will give you clear understanding on what are the things that you would be learning during the session, during the batches. And also today I would be taking you through one small application. So these kind of applications we would be developing in each batch, basically. Okay, so guys, just wanted to know. So are you all from the computer stream? And so it would be really great if you could just give us your one line introduction, like what is your technical background and what are the technologies that you have worked on. So you can type it in the question panel. So it would really help me to understand what is your background, and I can just continue the webinar on the same similar basis. Okay, so Gopal has worked on the mainframe. How about others? Okay, so Junaid has worked on HTML, CSS, and a bit of iOS with Swift. That's awesome. Ashu has worked on mobile application, Android, iPhone, and phone gap. That's fantastic. I am a process control and automation engineer, and oh, that's really great. Okay, so you all guys have impressive profile, and Ashu has taken the course on the Android. So that's great. And Praveen is working as a lecturer and working on the web application development, and Balaji is an electronic student. Okay, that's great. So you all guys have the impressive profile, and yeah, great. Okay, so before starting with the webinar, let me introduce myself. So my name is Vipul, and I have been working with Edureka since I would say something like 1.8 years, and I have been teaching Android and iOS classes with Edureka. Apart from that, I'm also a full-time Android and iOS engineer with Deloitte Digital, where we work on the Google Glass application, iPhone smartwatch application, and all the sort of applications. Oops, I don't know what's the issue I'm having. Yeah, so this is my profile. So yeah, so basically we are going to start with a new batch on the iOS app development with Swift with coming Saturday. Okay, so let me give you some brief understanding about what is Swift. So Swift is a new programming language that Apple introduced in 2014. So in the last year's Google I/O, not Google I/O, sorry, it was the Apple WWDC conference. They introduced a new programming language, I would say brand new programming language that is called as Swift. And one of the beauty of the Swift programming language is it is pretty simple as compared to the Objective-C, which we used to use earlier to create the iOS applications. So in case if you have a JavaScript background, you have a C background, or you have a Java background, you would find it much more easier to understand basically. So Swift language is pretty similar to the JavaScript. So in case if you have worked on the JavaScript or Scala applications, you would find that Swift is almost very easy. And also it is much more powerful, much more flexible, and much more fast as compared to the Objective-C. So Objective-C was the traditional programming language for developing the iOS application since I would say something like 1980s. But now the Swift is a future. So maybe in coming years, the Swift will be replacing all the Objective-C framework. So in fact, it has replaced most of the frameworks which are available in Objective-C, but developers are taking some time to understand the language, and slowly they will port the applications to the Swift. So I think it's a very good opportunity for you guys to learn the Swift, because Swift has just started. And if you learn a Swift and if you start developing applications using Swift, you would be having pretty bright future, because you would be into the race right from the start. Okay, so what are the things that we are going to see today? So we are going to see why Swift programming language, comparing Swift with others, what are the Swift features that you will be getting, and we will also see what kind of applications that you can build on the Swift platform. Okay, so very first thing is why Swift programming. So as per WWDC conference, the Swift programming was evolved and they developed the Swift programming language. The reason was Swift, they wanted something which is much more faster and much more easier to integrate. So they came up with the Swift programming language. The Objective-C was solving all the purpose, but Swift Objective-C was, I would say, it was kind of difficult for the newcomers. And also the speed and execution time of Objective-C, it was not pretty much impressive as compared to other programming language, something like Python. But Swift programming, it's considered to be 40% faster than the Python. So in case if you don't know Python, so Python is the programming language which we normally use for the scripting on the web frameworks. So Python is considered to be a faster programming language, and it compiles very well, and the execution time is much more lesser. But Swift is much more faster than the Python. So the applications that you would be developing using the Swift, so those will be memory efficient and those will be having a pretty much better performance. So that's one of the reason they introduced the Swift, and also they added all the new frameworks into the Swift platform, and they came up with the SpriteKit and SceneKit using the Swift platform. So it is pretty much faster as compared to other programming languages. So just to give you some background, so as you can see, so Objective-C was developed in the early 1980s. So it was the traditional programming language which we use for almost 34 years for creating the iOS or the desktop applications. So the main problem was of the Objective-C was the memory management, as I said. So it was not pretty much well in the memory management. So till now, there were a lot of issues that were present in the Objective-C. There were also a problem of safety, something like dynamic typing. So nowadays, most of the programmers they like the languages. Those are basically called as something like JavaScript. So where you would not be declaring the object type. So those are not strict compiled languages. I can just say something like var a is equal to 10 or var a is equal to Vipul. So you don't need to specify the data type, something like string, integer, character. So no need of doing that. So Apple also wanted to do something like that. They wanted to have this feature into their programming languages where user will not have to specify the data types. He will just declare a variable and he can just assign the value to that variable, and the data type will be determined automatically. User need not to be remember those data types. So that all the features came into the Swift, which were not available in Objective-C. And Swift, it is built on the top of the C++. Also, the Objective-C was built on the top of C++, but it was having some burdens on top of C++. But now Swift has taken away all those burdens. And the syntax of the Objective-C was little bit scary, I would say. It was good, but it was kind of scary. And the method names and the frameworks that we used to use, those were, I would say, a little bit tricky or scary. But Swift has taken away all that hassle, because writing the programming in Swift is pretty much easier, which I will be showing you in the coming slides. Okay, so let's see basically some of the Swift example. So as you can see, so in case if you have worked on the PHP, Objective-C or Ruby, you can compare the Swift syntax with all other programming languages. So let's say I want to declare a particular variable and I want to print the values of that variable. So normally in the PHP, you would always start the variable with $. So this is what all the developers like. They don't need to specify the data type. They can just say something like $x is equal to 0.0, $y is equal to 1.0, welcome message is equal to hello world. So you can see there is no need of specifying the data type over here. You just say dollar and the variable name is equal to value. But in the Objective-C, it was not the case. In the Objective-C, you need to remember the data type all the variables. Something like if I want to store 0.0, I need to write something like double or ns double. If I want to store the message hello world, I need to know the data type as ns string. So you can see. So if you want to store 10 types of value, you need to understand or you need to remember 10 types of data type, which was, I would say, it was quite hectic for the developer, because the developer, they would like to focus mainly on the programming logic rather than declaring the variables and doing all sort of manual things. So Ruby is also very much flexible in that case. You can just say something like x comma y comma z is equal to the values and the welcome message. So what Apple did, Apple took the idea from these programming languages and they came up with Swift, and now you can see declaring the. So guys, just wanted to confirm with all of you, are you all able to see the syntax? So is it readable to you? Okay, so this is readable to all of you. That's great. So as you can see over here, so okay, let me do one thing. Let me take it in full screen. Yeah. So as you can see over here, so in this Swift, if you want to declare the variable, you don't need to have the data type. You can just say something like var. I can say x is equal to 0.0, comma y, comma z. And again, you can see, so there is no need of declaring x, y, z separately. You can just write comma, comma, and declare the values. So it is very much like Ruby over there. Okay. And if you want to make a variable constant, so constant variable is the variable uh, so let's say I want to declare a variable whose value I don't want to change thereafter. So it is called as constant. So nobody can change the value of the constant variable. So you don't need to write any constant keyword or something. You can just specify let variable name and you can specify the value. So when I say let and the variable name value, it means the value of the variable cannot be changed. It is like constant. So in Swift, you would be using the let keyword over here. And in case, so yes, Ashu, so in case you guys are pretty much familiar with PHP or Ruby, or even if you have a basic understanding of those languages, you would find that Swift is much more interesting and it has got similar kind of syntax. Okay, so other example that I would like to take to is, so let's take an example of concatenation. So in other programming languages, you can see the concatenation is something like you would be doing using the plus operator. In the Objective-C, it was kind of, I would say, lengthier syntax. You would say something like ns string, string by appending string. So you would have to write a pretty much big method. So string by appending string, and you would be specifying the source and destination, and basically those two source and destination would get appended to each other. But in case of Swift, again, it helps us a lot. You can just specify the plus symbol over there. So I can just say something like a plus double quotes plus b. So what it is going to do, it is just going to form the hello world out of that. So you don't need to remember the method names. You can just use the normal plus operator, which you would be using in Java or in Ruby, basically. So it is pretty much easier language to follow. So let's take an example of loop. So basically, if you want to write a loop, so you can see in Swift how easy it is. So I can just say something like for. So just to let you know, I'm looking at the last block that is called as Swift. So I'm just saying something like for I in, and here I'm using the range operator, something like 0 triple dot 5. It means go from 0 to 5. So iterate over all the numbers and print them in the screen. So I'm just saying something like for I in 0 to 5, local variable is I. And you can see you don't need to use the format specifier or you don't need to use the plus symbol. I can just say something like local variable is, and I can say I. So what it is going to do, it is going to print the value on the screen. So it is something like you are just using the range operator, so that you don't need to specify the increment operator, or you just don't need to specify the conditional operator. You can just say something like 0 condition range operator and 5. It will automatically iterate over those values and it will print them on the screen. So this is how the Swift program looks like. So another example that I would like to take, so let's say you want to write a switch case. So you can see in the Swift, the switch case is pretty much similar to the switch case which you use in other programming languages. So I can just say something like switch of I, and I can run different cases over there, case 0, 1, 2, and I can say print values. So writing the switch case in Swift is very similar to that of PHP and Ruby. So for printing the values on the screen, we generally use the println syntax. But in Objective-C, the syntax that we used to use, it was called as nslog. So nslog will actually print out the value on the screen over there. Okay, and guys, at any moment, if you have any questions regarding Swift programming language or anything regarding the course, please feel free to put down your questions in the question panel so I can address all those questions. Don't hesitate. So let's say you want to declare a particular function in the Swift for printing a particular values. So this is where the Swift is much more powerful and it is different than other programming languages. So normally in other programming languages, you always write the return type at the beginning of the function. So you would say something like function say hello, return hello and person name. Okay, so but in case of Swift, the things are a little bit different. So I can say something like function say hello, and there I'm writing the return type by writing the arrow over there. So I'm saying something like, so whenever I call the say hello function, it is going to return me the value of type string over there. So this is how basically you declare the function. So here I'm declaring the say hello function, and what it is going to do, it is going to return me the person name over there. So I would just like to take you through basically how you write them in the Xcode. So what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to fire a Xcode and I'm going to create basically new file. So in the latest version of Xcode, they came up with the feature that is called as playground. So in case if you don't know what is Xcode is, so Xcode is the IDE, that is a platform we are going to use for developing all the applications in Swift and also for writing all the programs, creating the games in the Swift programming languages. So for now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say something like I want to create a playground. I will click next. I will say my playground and I will write create over there. Okay, so let me do one thing. Let me close the current project. I will create new playground. I will say hello and I will create the playground. Okay, so you can see how beautiful this Swift is. So the feature that they have added is called as playground. So you can try out all the concepts over here, and whatever the things that you will try, you will immediately see the output on the right hand side. So like traditional programming languages, you don't need to build or run the project. So as and when you will start writing the program, you will immediately see the output on the right hand side. So let's say I write something like print and I write, okay, so let me do one thing. Let me increase the font. I will make it presentation font. Yeah. So I can say something like welcome to webinar. So you can see, so when I wrote this particular statement and as soon as I saved it, so immediately I am seeing the output on the right hand side. Or let's do one thing. I will say something like for I in 1 5. So what I'm doing, I'm writing the range operator and I will say something like print value is I. Okay, so you can see, so when I say value is I, and so immediately on the right hand side I'm getting all the iterations. So it is saying that this loop will iterate between the values between 1 to 5 and it will print all those values on the screen. So it immediately shows to me all those things. So you can see, you can also see the output over here. So it is saying that it is going to print the values. So in the traditional programming languages, you would have to write for I is equal to 0, I less than 5, I plus plus, all those things. But in case of Swift, you don't need to specify any increment operator. You just need to say something like I want to iterate between the values 1 to 5 and it will just iterate over those values. So this is how Swift works basically. So let's say if you want to write a function. So if you want to write the function in the Swift, I can say something like func. So we use the keyword called as func, F-U-N-C. Okay, so I can say something like func print value, and I want to say something like this function is going to return the value of type string. So this is how you specify the return type in the Swift programming languages. So you write the function name and you write the arrow and you specify that this function is going to return a value of type string. So here I can just say simply return thanks for calling function. So what I'm doing, I'm just calling the print value function and it is returning a string. So now what I can do, I can just say something like print value. And when I call print value, you can see immediately it is showing me the output on the right hand side. So the output that we are seeing over here, it is called as, so thanks for calling this function. So you can see you don't need to basically do all those things, something like just create an object and call the functions and all those sort of things. And why it is printing twice? So Manish, it is just giving us the indication that the print value function is working, which will return us thanks for calling this function. And it is triggering the print value function. So it is. So it is just giving us the indication. So actually the function is just running once, but it is just giving us the indication that that function is getting called successfully. And it is also returning the value to us. So that's just the indication. And one of the beauty of the Swift programming languages, it is called as tuple. So I'm just taking you through the things which are present in the Swift. But once you join the course, so we would be going into much more deeper into those concepts. So one of the concepts which I liked very much in the Swift, it is called as tuple. So let me tell you what is tuple is. So I can say something like, so I will declare a function print, and this function is going to print the user's first name and it is going to print user's last name. So first name is of type string and last name is of type string. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm creating the function which is going to return us the tuple. So I can say something like return my first name is, I will say Vipul, and my last name is Shah. Okay, so you can see, so what I'm returning, you would have heard that in the many programming languages you cannot return more than one values from the function, or if you want to return more than one value inside the function, you would always pass the values by reference. But in case of Swift, it is pretty much simpler. So you would just define the tuple. So tuple is something like you would be declaring them in the round brackets. So you can see this function is returning us two values. One is first name and one is last name. So how would I call this particular function? So I can say something like let value is equal to, so I will say something like print values. Okay, and now I can say something like, I will say value dot first name and value dot last name. So you can see, so what I'm getting over here, I'm getting the values which are written by the function. So I can just say value dot first name and value dot last name. So this is one of the beautiful feature that is added into the Swift, and you would not find this feature in any other programming language. And we can, so I got a question from Manish. We can have multiple items written and can we have the different data types? So yes, absolutely Manish. So let's say I want to create a tuple which returns us the person name and his age. So I can say something like name and age is of type integer. Okay, so here I can return something like Vipul and 23 over here. I'm getting the issue. Okay, so okay. Okay, so again, the things are changed in Swift 1.0 basically. So I think I will have to say something like this. Okay, so now you can see. So what I have done is I have declared the 32-bit integer over here, and I'm getting the value dot name, and I'm getting value dot age over here. Okay, so you can see, so now you can return, you can also return the multiple types of values from the function. So it is pretty much useful. So tomorrow if you want to create the function which returns all the information about the employee, so you can just say something like, you can just declare all the things that you want to return in the tuple and it will return those values basically. So this is how Swift is structured, and you can pass on multiple values over here. So as I said, if you want to print the values, you would just use the println function, or you can use the print function in the Swift. Then the very beautiful feature of Swift is declaring the collections. So in other programming languages, you would just declare the array. So if you want to declare the array, you would be creating the array syntax, then you will be passing the values inside that. But in Swift, it is pretty much easier. So let's say I want to declare the array of strings. So I can say something like where name is equal to Vipul, comma, Vinay. So what I have done over here, so I have declared the array of two names, that is Vipul and Vinay. So by default, whenever you use the where keyword, the array are they are mutable. Something like you can dynamically add or remove the items. So you can see. So if I say something like println name, so what it is going to do, it is going to print two values. Then I can say something like name dot append, and I can say Vishal. So if I say name dot append Vishal, so now what it is doing, it is printing three values over there, that is Vipul, Vinay and Vishal. So now let's say I want to basically, so I can say something like insert. So between Vipul and Vinay, I want to insert third value. So I can say something like 1, and in the here, sorry, I will write Akshay at index 1. So what you can see over here, so now we have got Vipul, then we have got Akshay, then Vinay and Vishal. So you can see, so you can insert the values at the end, or you can also insert the values in between. And what about the sequence? What about, I mean, indexing? Pratik, your question is not clear to me. Sorry. Okay, so can you please elaborate your question? In the meantime, I will also explain you guys next things. So let's say you got the array and you are adding the elements inside those array. Now what I want to do is I want to get the element on the second position. So I can say something like name of 2. So what I'm getting Vinay over there. Or I can say something like name dot remove at index. So I can say something like remove at index 2, and it is saying that it is going to remove the Vinay. And if I print the names again, so what I'm going to get over here, so I'm going to get Vipul, Akshay and Vishal. So now Vinay is not there because 0, 1, 2. It has deleted the item at third position basically. And Praveen, it is the interpreted language basically. So it's not compiled. So in case if you are developing the iOS applications also, so it is going to be interpreted. So all the frameworks, they will get compiled, but whatever data types or whatever things that you will be doing, those will get dynamically interpreted. Okay, so this is how basically you will be doing the things over here. Okay, so this is how you will do that, and I can say something like name dot remove last. So remove last, what it is going to do, it is going to basically remove the last element. I can say remove all, it is going to remove all the elements, or I can also specify the range. So this is also one of the things which I like very much, and you would not find it in much other programming languages. You can specify the range, something like I want to remove all the elements between range 0 to 3 or between range 5 to 10. So this is a very beautiful feature. So what it is going to do, it is going to remove the elements between those ranges over there. So you can see how flexible it is, and by looking at the syntax, so guys, what is your feedback? So how are you finding this language? It is easier, right, as compared to what other programming languages that you are using? So what is your impression about this particular language? Yeah, so it is pretty much easier. So also when I started creating the iOS applications, maybe 2 or 3 years back, I started with the Objective C, and that time I was having the different impression because Objective C was kind of, I would say, it was tricky, it was a strict programming language, and it was difficult. But when I started developing applications in Swift last year, I found it pretty much easier to implement basically, and it is really awesome. Yes, and it's easier. So you can see, so by looking at the basically syntax, you can immediately identify. So even if you are not done Swift, so you can see, so when I write the code over here, you can immediately come to know that, okay, so I have declared the array. When I say remove at index, I'm removing something. When I say insert, I'm inserting something. So it is much more declarative basically. So structures, so Swift also provides you the structures. So in case if you're done C or C++, you must have come across structures over there. So I would say structures they are like something like brother of your Objective-C. This is how you will be declaring the classes. So again, declaring the class is pretty much simpler. So let me give you a simple example. Okay, so let me give you the example of classes. So I can say something like I want to declare, and one of the beautiful feature of using Xcode, it gives you auto intelligence. So once I write class, you can see it is going to automatically complete a lot of things over there. So I'm going to write the class keyword, and what it is giving me, it is giving me the intelligence or auto completion. I will write the name as person. I'm going to declare two variables, something like var name. And one of the things that you would like to remember is after writing the statements, you would never write the semicolons over here. So in Swift, you would never write the semicolons at the end of the variables. So I'm writing name and I'm writing age. So in Swift, if you see, whenever you declare the variable, it asks you to create the initializers, or initializers are also called as constructors in other programming languages, or you can declare your variables as optional. So this is something new you will find in Swift. So what is meant by optional? Optional means I'm saying that I can assign the value to this variable, or I might not assign the value to this particular variable. So I can say something like my var, it is going to be of type string and it can be optional. Okay, so it is giving me okay, so yeah, I'm going to say something like my age, it can be of type integer and it is going to be optional. So you can see, so now those errors are gone away. Okay, I got a question from Manish. What is the concept of playground? I see you're creating class and then writing the methods at your. So yes, Manish. So what is playground? So a very simple example that I would like to give you. So let's say you want to try out few things. So normally what happens in other programming languages, if you want to try out the things, you will first write the code, then you will compile the code, and then you will run the code. And when you run the code, you see the output. But playground is something like, so what is meant by playground? Where you can play, where you can try out different stuff. So here what I'm doing, I'm just writing a syntax, and immediately I'm seeing the output on the right hand side. So what is going to happen when I declare that syntax? So it is something like, it is not strict. You can try out different things in this Swift. So tomorrow, if you learn any new concept and if you want to try it out, like how it behaves or what output you would get, so you can just open the playground. You can just copy paste the syntax or you write the syntax, and immediately on the right hand side you will see the output. So this is the concept of playground basically. So where you would not manually have to compile and run the program to see the output, you will immediately see the output on the right hand side. That's the concept. Okay, so a question mark that I told you, it is something like I'm saying that those variables can be optional. Optional variable means I can assign the value to those variable or I cannot or I might not assign the value. So that is the concept of optional. And Manish, yes. So we do create the programs in this playground. The only thing would be so let's say you want to create application in the for the iPhone. So you would not creating it in the playground. You would be creating the actual project. But let's say if you want to try out a particular case, something like I want to make a request to the network and I want to see what output I get. So that syntax you can write in playground, but you cannot create the full-fledged app inside the playground. You can just copy and see the output of different code snippets, something like that. And it's like a notepad in the. So I would say this is a accurate definition. It is like a notepad with the built-in compiler. Yes. So it was. I really like that definition. Okay, so you can see over here, so I have declared a person, and what I can do is I can say something like var print info. So what I'm doing over here is I'm just citing the function something like, oh sorry, it should not be var, it should be func. Okay, so I'm creating the function over here and I'm going to say something like println. So when you want to print the value of the optional keyword, you always write the explanation on above. Okay, so I'm going to say name and age. Okay, so now I can say something like var p is equal to, so here I'm not going to use the new keyword. I'm just going to say something like person. Then I will say p dot name is equal to Vipul and p dot age is equal to, let's say, 23. Okay, so now I will say something like p dot print info, and when I say something like print info, it is saying Vipul and 23. So now you are getting the 23. So you can see the output that you are getting on line number 10, it is Vipul and optional 23. Optional means since it is an optional variable, and if you want to extract the value from the optional variable, you have to write the explanation. So now you can see after I write the explanation, I'm getting the value that is Vipul and 23. So these are some of the new data type that Swift has added. Or something like, let's say whenever you assign the name, I want to prefix the Mr. keyword before that. So I can also write it something like this. So I will say something like this, and I will say will set. So I can write will set. Will set means whenever you assign the new value. So this is something like, I can also say something like set. Okay, and I will say name is equal to Mr. plus new value. So new value basically it's a built-in keyword that we have over here. So it is kind of keyword basically which will give you the value. So I can say something like Mr. and name. So now what I'm going to do is, okay, so I'm getting the error. Okay, so it's basically not working correctly, but basically these are called as the will set and did set. So what you can do over here, so those are also called as the computed properties. So let me show you the example of computed property in Swift. What are those? So you can see something like this. So you are saying that if there is a variable called as center, so whenever you try to set the value, you would say something like, so if you set the value of the center, it is internally going to set the value of origin X and origin Y. So if I say something like center is equal to 10, so whatever value that you have specified to center, it is internally going to assign those values to X and Y. So this is also one of the features that you would not see in any program language. So also whenever you will try to get the value of the center, it is going to give you the value of the center X and center Y. So these are called as the computed properties. So this is also one of the very cool feature that you would see in the Swift program language. Okay. Okay, so these are some of the features of the Swift program language, and you can create the application something like this. So I would like to show you the simple application. So one of the application, yeah. So you can see, so this application has been developed in the Swift program languages, and what this application does, this application calculates your current location, where you are exactly, and it will show you the temperature of that location. So, in the whenever you will start writing the applications for the iPhone, you will be getting the simulator. So this is called as the simulator, where you can test your applications. So there is no need of your having the iPhone with you. So you can just use the simulator and you can test out your applications. So these kind of applications we will be developing during our course. So I would be teaching you how you can create a beautiful UI, how you can perform the network requests, how you can get the response, and how you can show that response on the screen basically. So here what we are doing plenty of things. Here we are designing the UI, we are fetching users current location, we are getting the temperature for the current location, and we are displaying it on the UI. So if you want to test, so I can say something like I will specify the location as let's say I want to test the temperature of Mumbai. So I can say something like Mumbai lat long. So this application works on the concept of lat long. So if you give the lat long, it will tell you the temperature.